Yeah, I'd say let's dive in. So first things first, let's start with a round of introductions. So welcome everybody to this happy hour conversation, discussion about kickback and omission, the piece that we're going to talk about today. I'm Mikael Burke. I'm the Associate Artistic Director here at About Face Theater Company. About Face Theater. And I'm also joined by Kim L. Hunt, the Executive Director of Pride Action Tank, and the dynamic performance duo of Shanta Nurullah and Zara Baker, also known as ShaZah. Very exciting. And ShaZah are the creators of Omission, one of the pieces in our Festival of Pieces, virtual pieces about the intersection of Black and queer life. And so I'm thrilled that we're all gathered here today, and we're gonna chat a little bit about the work and the making of the work. So I'll pass it off to Kim. How about just to say hi and introduce yourself, or anything else you want to say before we dive in?
Sure. As Mikael said, I'm Kim Hunt, Executive Director of Pride Action Tank, which is a project incubator and think tank on LGBTQ issues that is a project of AIDS Foundation Chicago. And I wear a second hat there, where I'm the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy Operations. And in my quote unquote spare time, I am the co-host of Outspoken LGBTQ Storytelling, which is a monthly storytelling program that in the before times happened at Sidetrack the first Tuesday of the month. And now, like everything else, it's on Zoom. And we also have a podcast that's available wherever you find podcasts. And happy to be here today.
Absolutely. Zara, Shanta, either one of you want to take it away?
Shanta? I'm Shanta Nurullah. I work as a storyteller and a musician. I was doing the math. I won't actually do the math, but to say I've been a professional storyteller since 1978, and had my first musician's gig in 1972. I've been performing on sitar and bass through all of those years, and have worked with a number of people in Chicago, have performed in major festivals all over the country, and have told stories as far away as China. Recorded with a number of people. Right now, my recording and performing career, well, as you say, in the before times, my working groups were Sitarsis, and with Zara, what are the names of the groups? Classic Black, which combined jazz and storytelling. Freedom Song Leaders, which was mainly choral singing. And this thing we do here, ShaZah. Sorry. Oh, I didn't do the head.
Just so you know, whenever you hear ShaZah, you gotta go ShaZah, okay?
But
hello, everyone.
I think it would be different. ShaZah.
Oh, you gotta put a snap with it. Okay,
right.
Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. I'm Zara, and I too am a storyteller and a singer. I focus primarily on African-American folk songs and traditional African and African-American stories. But I also have done theater. I'm a teaching artist. I work with teen groups. I used to be a teaching artist with About Face Youth Theater. Yay. And I've worked with a number of teen ensembles in Chicago. And now I do deliver music programs virtually to pre-K children. Yay, the wheels on the bus. In addition to doing all of the projects that ShaZah just talked about. So that's what brings us up to today.
Very cool. So just to sort of frame the conversation that we're going to have around omission, Zara or Shanta, could you talk a little bit about omission and what it is? Like, how about, I guess the real question is, what was the thing that inspired the creation of that piece? And how did you come to the ideas that you came to? And I think that will then segue us into a larger conversation about the kind of overall themes of the piece we'll touch on in a sec.
Oh, we're gonna do this back and forth thing. You go, no, you go, okay. The first part of it was being in a partnership and being invited to go to the Stony Island Arts Bank and look at their archives and find something to build to work a concept around. So actually we first got an introductory video, and one of the statements that the guide mentioned was in showing us a slide collection from the University of Chicago was that the only presence of Black people in this large, very large collection of art slides was by omission. And immediately that struck a chord with me. And it connected also with the way that I often feel as being a member of the Black community, that as Black lesbians, we are present, but not necessarily visible. And so that was this first spark of like, ooh, let's see where this is gonna go. And then one of the slides was of two women. And I have to say that whenever we have a kind of a not so private joke that whenever someone says amen, we say two women. So when we saw those two women, that was something that was familiar to us. And then when we saw that they were circus performers and the two of us are performers, we saw a parallel of being performers, but also being on display in some kind of way, feeling that vulnerability. And so those were the 2 points that we thought, well, when we go to visit, let's see how we can grow this idea. So when we went to the Arts Bank, ShaZah, you want to take it from there?
So first we wanted to look at that slide again. And the slides were on the table right across from the computer that had the entire catalog of Ebony and Jet on it. And so Zara was sitting at the computer looking through the past digitized magazines, and I was drawn toward the Johnson Library. So she was looking through the magazines and I was looking through the books. And we were discovering different things. Mars, who was our docent for the day, basically, was going through and trying to pull out whatever books he was familiar with that had to do with queer topics. And he was running back and forth from the computer to the library and trying to help us out. He didn't really find much that I found relevant, but Zara found this article on Gladys Bentley, and which was fascinating, but also disturbing, that she had to denounce and deny her, the very thing that had made her very wealthy and famous during the Harlem Renaissance, in order to survive in her later years. And there was a definite parallel for me in terms of having to, or choosing to give up my woman-loving self in order to survive in the world that I was in, and ending up with the man who said, "I can make a woman out of you," and I was like, "Take me," because at the time that I came up in the community that I was living in, there were no examples of lesbians, and there was no public conversation on homosexuality except for the organist at church. And that was always with a snide remark or something. So I thought that I had done something really wrong, and anybody who started getting close to me, I felt like I had to admit to them, before you decide that you like me, you need to know this really horrible thing that I had done. And I would, confess that I had this affair with this woman. So, going through that, and then, getting with this guy who ended up being verbally and emotionally abusive, and spending like 12 years with him, having 4 babies. I could definitely relate to Gladys Bentley, So there were these, things going on in that story, and you can take it from there, Zara. As I have now spilled my guts.
Well, let's take a sip on that.
All right.
Yeah, well, I wanted to do more research on Gladys because I really wanted to know what was beyond that story. It just felt like it can't end here. So I was able to find out more information and find out that some of the reason for her denouncing her life, what had to do with her mother being ill, and she was the caretaker, the financial and emotional and physical caretaker for her, and she needed to remake her image in order to make money. So writing this letter, writing this article afforded her an opportunity to be able to work, and yet later on, she was interviewed by someone who came to her home, and he said he saw a picture of her with a man and a woman and asked her who was that in the picture. And she said, "Well, that's my husband and that's my wife." So it was that she hadn't actually given up her lifestyle. She had just publicly denounced it. But she only lived 8 years after that. So it wasn't, I have to think that there was something detrimental physically and emotionally to her for having to do that. And also, I read some of the articles that people wrote back to Ebony in response, thanking her and thanking Ebony for publishing it, because they too were struggling with their identity, and maybe they could find a cure like she had. So it felt very sad to me knowing how Ebony and Jet, everybody that we talked to, talked about how those were in everyone's home. That was the news of Black culture at one period of time. And so for that to be the message to all of the Black community across the nation, to me really felt like that reflected what came back to us, came back to lesbians, came back to queer people, was that message that they had put out. And I felt like it was really important for us to look further and try to recover some of that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I think that what you've created in Omission really speaks to both sides of that. I think there is a really exciting sort of dive into those feelings of needing to hide or shield or protect yourself, in that way. And then this really great sort of this wish or request, to what would happen if we people are able to live in their truth in a more substantial way, and how will that bloom and blossom. And I think it's so exciting to see. Kim, I'm going to throw it your way for a sec. As an audience member on this piece, I'd love to hear from you about like what hit you, what resonated with you, just how did the piece strike you, and what did it make you think about and consider?
All right. So as I shared before we came on air, so to speak, I've watched the piece twice and got something different from it, or a little more, I'll say, each time. And I think this piece has so many parallels that I can relate to, both in my personal life, as a friend of mine says, my W-2 work and my life's work. And it was all interwoven there. And the part of my bio that I didn't include is that I'm the former executive director of Affinity Community Services, which is an organization on the South Side, founded primarily by Black lesbians. And much of my work when I was at Affinity was about visibility, which this piece is one of the themes in this piece, right? And it was about bringing visibility to Black people in the LGBTQ community and LGBTQ people in the Black community. And then all the other layers, right? So a lot of times, even now, for example, when we say gay, we don't think of the whole community. We think of white cisgender gay men, and then a whole other narrative around that isn't necessarily the totality of white cisgender gay men. So that's something that came to mind for me. And then I think about, related to my W-2 work, it's lately we're doing a lot of work around LGBTQ aging. And one of the horrible statistics there is that about 70% of LGBTQ people feel like they have to go back in the closet when they enter long-term care facilities as they age. And some of these have been folks who have led closeted lives, but some of them are also folks who have been very active in the LGBTQ community, part of the fight for LGBT rights, and also, the HIV crisis and all that came with that. And they're going back into the closet and not being acknowledged. And this is at any income level. There are cases of lesbian couples. For example, there's a lesbian couple in Missouri trying to enter what I would call a very expensive independent facility, retirement facility as a couple. And the facility is saying, well, you know, we're a religious organization, and even though you basically have the money to get in here, we can't have you because your relationship is against our beliefs. And this is in 2020, soon to be 2021. So that whole piece around identity and how out can you be, even now, is very real for many communities. And Gladys Bentley's story in particular is, I think, a story that resonates with a lot of people even today, her making that choice, even though in her private life, very open. People know who the people are who are attached to her, but she has to kind of deny herself her identity in public. And we still see that happening today. And it's something that I, among others, are constantly working to make sure that institutions and facilities understand you do have LGBTQ people here, but you have not created an environment that makes it safe for them to be their authentic selves. And I think, Shanta, you mentioned the health, or maybe it was Zara, I can't remember. Can't remember which of the back and forths that was, but the health implications of that, I think that's very real. You know, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but when you have to deny who you are, of course that has an impact on your mental health, which has an impact on your physical health and all the things. And lastly, before I turn it over, Shanta, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I too was married to a man for about 10 years. Fortunately, he's a wonderful human being. We have a great relationship. We're very good friends. We continue to raise our children together. But, you know, that is a very practical decision that many people still make today around, do I follow this path that has been prescribed for me, or do I live my full authentic life, and what does it mean to make either choice? So I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
Yeah, I feel compelled just to mention that I happen to be the child of a similar situation. It was my dad who spent a good portion of his early 20s and 30s in the closet and married to my mother, which is why I get the glorious privilege of being here. But he has since passed, but I can speak to I agree. I feel like it's absolutely true that kind of holding in or you know, inability to live your true life outwardly does have detrimental impacts. You know, so it's, yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it in omission, that sort of the call to get to the other side of that. And the invitation to imagine how much better the world might be. You know, if we could all just live out and loud and proud and true. So yeah. Are there, from our pals in the audience, are there any questions from you about Kickback in general, about the creation of omission, about you know, or any of these ideas that we've spun on so far?
Hi, everybody. I have a question. So I know artists have talked about quarantine times as enabling them to come to these really interesting discoveries that they maybe didn't anticipate. I'm just wondering for you all if you had a different experience and you have found, I'm sorry about that, you've found the past few months difficult creatively, hard to summon up the courage to confront your past or to just think as an artist as you were accustomed to. Just kind of curious about the impact that what we've been going through has had on you.
Well, this quarantine has been so long that I feel like I've been through several stages. During the first stage, I drew a lot. I did a lot of art journaling and playing with color and paint markers a lot. And then I took up renewed my relationship with some of my instruments and got a bass teacher and tried to further my bass studies toward the goal of virtuosity. And so that continues. But this project, being commissioned to create this project, opened up the surprising interest in film and video and wanting to pursue that further. And so the challenge of staying in the house and using whatever you have on hand, that was really interesting to just having to come, dig deep and come up with something meaningful with just the resources that we had.
So for me, I feel like I'm with ShaZah. There were stages, and the first stage for me was a deep emotional dive when it felt like steel doors that were shutting in every direction. So no more teaching in the schools, no more performances coming up. And I actually had to figure out how to save my own life. And I remembered some healing practices that I had learned as far as a diet of eating wheatgrass, which is a food that's high in nutrition, but also has a lot of, the sprouts have a lot of B vitamins, so it can help bring emotional balance. So I basically went on a wheatgrass fast in order to try to stop myself from pummeling to who knows what. And shortly after that, the thing about it is that wheatgrass is one of the highest foods on the planet, is what I was told, and that it attracts high energy. And I just started noticing, I started getting calls from friends and people that were saying, don't forget to don't forget about Malidoma Somé, who says, sit at the altar and remember your ancestors. And so I went and I sat and remembered to call on my grandmother and ask for guidance about finding what my purpose was. And all of a sudden people were calling and saying, you want to do this 21-day rest yoga nidra program, and you want to can you sew some masks using the scraps of your African fabrics? Can you do some children's programming? All these things just started happening. Instead of focusing on what wasn't there, it became an adventure of noticing where the blessings were coming, and they kept coming, and kind of balancing that scale of the void and just the beauty of expanse and discovery, and continue all the way up to this. I keep saying all the way up to this, it keeps coming. So we're on a road of discovery. So I'm loving it in a weird kind of way. My purpose feels like it's being revealed every day.
I'd like to jump in on what you mentioned about healing, Zara, and the title of this piece, Mission, and saying and that sound often associated with meditation. And so what does the title mean for the two of you, and how did you come up with it?
Well, part of it was, so it started with omission, and we both focus on trying to bring the best into the world, trying to shift the focus toward expansion and love and beauty, and as opposed to wanting to see ourselves as victims in that you won't let us in, you know, or we decided that what if it was reversed and we just chose to invite people to expand their hearts, to come into that state of Om. And so, and the idea of like, that's what our mission is, that's what our purpose is, that everybody has different purposes, but our purpose is to bring love and to ask for the expansion of the hearts. And in that place of when I wrote the piece about what if we all saw each other as divine, that's the mission. That's the goal, is to see each other beyond what our box of what you should be is.
That's beautiful.
There were a couple other things that I didn't mention that I did during this time. One thing, one of my children is a happiness guy. And he lives in London, and he was calling me every week with suggestions of things to do related to gratitude and you know, just being happy, ways to be happy. And also, you know, I ended up anointing him as my life coach. You know, sometimes he had so many suggestions for me that I would just say, I gotta go. But, so I was working some of his suggestions, and then I remembered. And also I was having telehealth visits with my provider, and my mother is 94 years old and suffering from dementia. So that was really hard to deal with. And I was talking to my provider, and she said, would you like some counseling? I was like, yeah. So I have been working with a therapist, which has been helpful. But I also remembered about the Artist's Way. So I've been working through the chapters of the Artist's Way and doing morning pages every day. And also my son led me toward Wim Hof breathing practice. I've been doing breathing rituals in the morning after my writing morning pages. And so my creativity has been expanding, and like the Gladys Bentley song came after some of that, because the morning pages would be, then it would be the breathing, which would flow into the meditation, and then songs started coming. And Zara had written words for Gladys Bentley, and in the middle of the night, like the melody just came, I had to jump up and run to the piano and record it so I wouldn't forget it. And then we put it all together. So it's been popping around here.
So ShaZah, Megan had a question about who we wanted to see it. Who's our audience? What's our preferred audience? Why did we create this?
Our ideal, I think our ideal audience would be Black homophobes. So I sent a lot of invitations to people who would fit in that category, but like they're not here.
But also what we found with the other voices that are present are Black lesbians that were so excited when we did the Zoom call. They were so excited to be to step into the room, to be part of the group. So it's also for us. It's also for our peers to know that I was excited. I wanted them to see what we did with their words, even though each of them gave us like an hour interview and I only used maybe like 6 words out of each one. I tried to get an essence of something, and I was just excited. I wanted them to see that we value their words, and it went into this piece.
Yeah, I was so happy to see people I knew and some new people, but also to hear the words layered into the songs as well, and then voices that I recognized, and then also voices that I didn't know. And I think the clips that you chose from probably hours and hours of audio were so powerful, the way that you wove them together. They told a story unto themselves. And then seeing the pictures, I'm wondering where did all those pictures come from?
Well, most of the colored pictures were either sent to us or I found them on people's Facebook pages and asked if we could use them. The black and whites, I scoured the internet and found them, and I don't know whose they are, and I didn't have, you know.
We don't have to know.
But I was really surprised to see how many women-loving women pictures there were. That was really exciting.
So, ShaZah, I have to ask you, how did you pick up the sitar? How did that come to be?
It's a really long story, so I'll try to make it a little shorter. When I was 19 years old, I got a chance to go on one of those study abroad programs to India. I went thinking I was going to do a political science project on the untouchables, who are lower than the lowest caste. But I had been there for about a week and heard the sitar and fell in love with it. I had to argue with the director of my program to change my topic to music, and clearly I won that argument and found a teacher and spent 6 months getting the rudiments of the instrument. Brought it home and just was playing it for my own enjoyment, basically. But along the way was encouraged to bring it out and start playing it. And I came to meet Phil Coran, who was a great musician and teacher here in Chicago. And he encouraged me to just express myself on the instrument. And he wrote some music for me. And 50 years later, I'm still playing it. You know?
Wow. That's pretty cool. It's
so that was what was fun about finding that book with her picture in it. She became known as the sister with the sitar. And so when we were at the Arts Bank, that's when I saw I saw the book on the table. I didn't know that she already knew that it was there. But for me, it was a surprise that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I saw it on the shelf and pulled it out, and had already shown it to Mars, and he, got excited about it. And then I just left it on the table. And
I love that exchange where you tell Zara what page your interview is on, as though you just happen to know that.
Right.
Well done.
But in thinking about that, I did a couple of years ago. I did this project. I got a grant from DCASE to research women in music, and I did a thing on Instagram about 365 days of musical women, and in those 365 days, I only for sure found only a handful of lesbians that I knew for sure that of lesbian women in all of those 365 days, women that were out. So, they have to be more than 5.
For sure.
So it's still not safe for people's careers or personal safety to be out in this time, and it's really sad. I mean, this, I do a lot of work with children, and there's still this thing that people associate gay people with being pedophiles, and that's not it,
Mm-hmm.
But people still have that idea that they shouldn't expose their children to us because we might molest them or something, and the pedophiles are straight people. Hi, Mama ShaZah. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is one of the mothers of one of my friends just joined us.
Nice.
Yeah.
And one thing that struck me about this is that we're talking a lot about you were talking a lot about entertainers in this piece. And, we think about entertainment as this opportunity to be kind of larger than life. And it's just interesting how folks had to continue to carry out performance off stage to sort of survive, like you said. And that, even in the arts, there is this, there are these barriers, right? You can be this on the stage, but you still can't be this in your personal life, whatever this is.
Right, but I mean, look at Queen Latifah just came out.
Did she come out?
Yes, she just came out this year, I think.
I didn't. Okay, I got to find that because I thought she was still closeted.
There are others, and I'm
yeah, there are others. But then you see folks like, let's say Janelle Monáe, who comes out as bisexual, top of her career, and it's just like, this is who I am. And as we pointed out, though, even today, there are folks who are not in spaces where they feel comfortable being out. And I think it's interesting that tonight is the premiere, and Megan pointed this out on Facebook, of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Here's another person from queer history, Black history, but the two are not necessarily married, they're separate in the discussion about her. So it'll be interesting to see how they, in 2020, portray her full life. Because what often happens too with folks, especially historically, is They may not be queer or straight. They don't have sex at all, right? It's not
Right.
about, there's no sexual life to any of these folks.
Right.
And then you found out, oh my God, there is, which is fine. But I think, you know, we still have trouble seeing people from that lens.
Well, I think that with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, much of it will have to do with how August Wilson portrayed it, because this is a film of his play.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, so I don't know how he treated it.
Yeah, you've named something here, and you said it too when you said for you part of this was to share with Black homophobes that a lot of times even with Black authors, that part, the full range of humanity under the Black experience is not talked about at all.
I showed the piece to my mother this week, and I didn't really think that she was going to react very favorably to it, but she loved it. You know?
Hey.
So it was a total surprise. She said she was going to have a watch party with her friends. I'm like, wait a minute, you can't be inviting a whole bunch of people up to your apartment now. Hold up.
Hey,
we do still have a pandemic.
She came to our wedding, which was a surprise too. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I see a question. Can you talk a bit about how you hope this project will spur further exploration, perhaps further happiness, further acceptance of self?
Well, I hope to get a handle on the technology enough to do a whole bunch more short films about Black lesbians, especially in music, since I already have a lot of interviews and conversations with Black musicians, the ones that I think are lesbians. I'm gonna go back and have some more conversations, some frank conversations. But you know, to just, I mean, you know, I'm at the age where I just want, this girl wants to have some fun, right? So once I can get out the house, I want to have my camera and explore in lots of ways. And I am about spreading happiness and love and light, and hope to be performing again and doing that in as many ways as possible.
And thank you for that question. I think it's multi-layered. I remember during the Zoom call with the group of participants and how excited they were and how important they felt that it was to be present, to have a presence in the Stony Island Arts Bank archives in particular, where all of us had been to for other things, but that there was no presence there. And I think one of the things that stands out for me with our piece is just this one voice that keeps saying, I have a story, I have a story, I have a story, I have a story. And that's what I hope is that we develop speaking and listening skills, you know, in a reciprocal kind of way, like not just speak and expect people to listen to you, but that we are speaking and our voices are heard and listened to with open hearts, so that the goal is that we live in community, together, that we are seen as one, that we are battling the same causes, but we want to do it in an authentic way where all of ourselves are welcome into that room. And that's what I want. I want us to be able to see each other more clearly and live openly with I don't want to be tolerated. It's like I want us to love each other for what we bring to the circle.
Beautiful.
I have a comment I'd like to share. One of the moments, there was a line that really I thought was powerful about being present in the cracks and crevices. Is that a line? About, I thought that was, I don't know, that really struck me about being present and asserting the presence without necessarily being, visible or recognized, and how to me that really was effective with the meditative, I guess, format, how the work sort of seeps in and conveys a message in a way through music, rhythm, images, nature. I don't know, I just thought thematically that was a really effective way to absorb what was being presented in a variety of senses that really goes deep. So that was really powerful for me in the work. And I also wanted to share how just discovering Gladys Bentley, I did a research project about this pansy craze for an about face event, and was very just shocked to discover this era of these performers and artists that haven't been visible or really known, and this sense of discovery and desire for more people to be aware of that. So I'm glad that you're bringing that to light too. And then just thirdly, I just think of in the ways that even though I'm out at work or whatever to make money or make a living or support myself, like the horrible choice she had to make, how that we all do that subtly, as we were sort of talking about earlier. So there was just a few comments I have, and really loved the work. That was really cool.
Thank you. There was a question for ShaZah. Michael, can you see it? Can you read it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It's ShaZah, you mentioned how you were eager to learn more about the technology and gain more tactility with the filming. And the question is, how difficult was it to put this piece together?
Oh, Zara should answer that because she's over there cracking up. Go on.
Let me say, ShaZah.
Go on.
Well, Michael really is the one that probably could answer it best. He held our hand through all of our initial concept, which I have to say how wonderful the About Face staff was in supporting us and with our limitations, and just walking us through every step that we needed, and helping us figure out what was possible and what things we might need to rethink. I think that it's a steep learning curve, and actually so much of it happens in the editing, which About Face did, which thank you so much. But after seeing it, it's like, ooh, can I intern? It's like, I want to learn how to do this, and I want to learn how to do that. And it's fascinating to just see what technology can do. And we're excited about taking it on a little step at a time, because once you see what the possibilities are, it's endless. So. Okay,
but I couldn't even figure out how to get everything into Dropbox, right? So then I got some things in the Dropbox. I couldn't get everything into that. So then I was sending Michael all of these emails with, you know, a picture here, a picture there, maybe 5 pictures here. Man, I sent him over 60 pictures in all these emails. And I'm like, at some point he's going to call me and say, stop. But he didn't, right? So thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was gonna say. I think it was really interesting for all of the kickback pieces. The processes were virtually as unique as the individuals who made them, as far as how the pieces came into being. But I really enjoyed this process because it was like you all were very clear about this is the vision that we have. And here are all 6,000 of our puzzle pieces. Can you help us put the puzzle together like this? And it wants to look like this when it's done. And you know, and then we worked with Timmy Samuels and Starbelly Studios as to help us with the editing process. And so Timmy took, you know, I pulled all the pieces parts together. And Timmy and I talked through like, okay, we think it goes like this. And then Timmy took that away and he came back and he said, I think this is it. And then there were a few rounds of you know, back and forth of like, yes, but tweak this, make this a little bit clearer and that kind of stuff. But it was like, it was cool just to see how all of the different pieces, parts, you know, that if you were to look at the folder, the collected folder of all of this stuff, you would have, it looked overwhelming because you're like, what? How is this gonna work? But then when it folded together, it, you know, became the beautiful thing that we all got to experience. So it's just such a neat process.
Yeah, I love how this virtual time has forced us all to be collaborative in so many different ways and to try to convey the vision for what we want to be true at the end of a project, right? And it's starting out as like, ugh. I've had a, you know, not exactly the same, but parallel experience just with the work of Pride Action Take. Like everybody, you know, had to pivot to a virtual space. And it's like, how do you do this work? How do you communicate? How do you convey your vision through the air? And and it's, you know, it's bumpy. It was bumpy at first, at least. And I know from my own experience, you know, early programming virtually was a little rough. And this past, I guess it was last week, we did this amazing breakfast, legislative breakfast on LGBTQ aging issues with probably 5 or 6 different components, no MC, but we were able to just seamlessly pull it all together. Lots of communication, right? Like you all experience, tons of communication. So you can't take anything for granted in terms of folks knowing what it is that you're trying to accomplish and everybody being on that journey together. So that's one of the cool parts about what we've been forced to do, you know, acknowledging that we are missing quite a few people as well as we have had to shift to virtual. But at the same time, we've also learned these new ways of working together that I hope we don't lose once this is finally over, whenever that is.
Yeah. I just want to echo that. I think like there is a sort of initial fear about like, how do we, you know, because we had been developing the impulse and the idea for what became Kickback for, you know, about 2 years. And it was going to be, you know, it was going to be and kind of site specifically activating those spaces with different pieces. It was going to be pretty neat. And then, you know, and then in the moment of needing to pivot, we're like, oh, okay, well, this is something we've never done before. And it's scary, but then as I was telling some of my students this summer, I was like, well, it is scary, but also remember, everyone is standing on the brink of this precipice right now. And that was, very heartening to remember that, like, it's scary for literally everyone. We're all, and then we just, we dove in and made some magic. And I'm, very proud of the thing we made. So yeah, I think, we've had a nice solid happy hour here together. Are there any other kind of last lingering thoughts, questions, comments, dreams, hopes, wishes, caviar dreams?
Well, just, thank you so much again for everything and for this evening, focusing on our piece.
Absolutely.
We've enjoyed almost every minute of it.
Excuse me, I'm showing myself finally. This is ShaZah. I'm so sorry I was late. I got thrown off. I got on too early and then got distracted and then found out I was late. I evidently missed the showing. Will it be available shown again?
It is, yeah. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's available until January 12th.
Okay, and you'll let me know how to get to it, right?
Go to aboutfacetheater.com.
Okay.
And then you'll see Kickback. It's a purple banner. And then you'll see our faces on it.
Okay. I'll follow through. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Kim and Shanta and Zara, for hanging out and sharing your awesomeness and your wisdom with us. And so great to see all your glorious faces. It's been grand, but let's everybody go have a happy rest of your Friday.
Thank you.
And enjoy the holidays to the extent that you can.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thanks
you.
everyone. This was really fun.
Nice to meet you.
Beautiful.
You too.
Blessings.
Great stories.
Thank you.